Dear friends, I welcome you. I have two questions for you. When will all this finally end? How far are the EU elites willing to go in their quest to control the internet? On the surface, it looks like an endless drama, especially when it comes to the conflict between Germany and Elon Musk. It all started when Musk took over Twitter, which has now become known as X. He has become a target for the authorities seeking to control freedom of speech on the internet. Political discussions and attempts to silence him began to escalate as they tried to block and ban interviews they didn't like. As a result, when their attempts were unsuccessful, they turned to legal methods. One of the most striking examples was the case of Alice Weidel, the chairman of the AfD party, whose interview on Platform X was threatened with blocking by the European authorities. The European Union, especially Germany, has put pressure on Musk with judicial threats, trying to prevent this important moment for freedom of speech. But Musk didn't give up, and the interview took place anyway. This has become an important precedent in the legal struggle for freedom of opinion on the internet, which has escalated with the adoption of new EU legislation aimed at stricter control and moderation of content, including censorship, which restricts freedom of expression. However, Musk remained steadfast. When all attempts at control and censorship failed, the EU switched to a legal war. Germany recently took an important step when the Berlin District Court issued a ruling requiring X to provide data on the platform's engagement, including likes, reposts, and content visibility, to investigate possible election interference. This court order forces Musk to hand over this data by February 23rd, so that research groups can analyze it and find out whether interference in the election process really took place. Despite this pressure, Musk remains steadfast and defies European demands, while platforms such as Meta and TikTok have already begun to cooperate. This court decision was an important step in forcing Elon Musk to comply with the requirements of the European Union and is one of the first major tests for the EU law on digital services. This law was adopted to regulate online platforms and ensure their cooperation with European authorities. At first glance, it seems that everything is aimed at protecting the integrity of elections and democratic values, but in fact it looks more like an attempt to control freedom of speech. It becomes obvious to ordinary people that Germany and the EU are ready to support freedom of expression only when they decide what should be said. It is no coincidence that pressure on Musk's platform is intensifying just ahead of the German elections. The European authorities claim that their goal is to protect democratic integrity, but in reality their message is unequivocal. Either obey or you will be destroyed. Musk, for his part, has already faced pressure and criticism from Europe following the takeover of Twitter, now known as X. He was accused of spreading disinformation, trying to make the platform more free and open to different points of view. All of these actions by Brussels openly demonstrate an attempt to control online expression, which only underscores the hostility and inflexibility towards freedom of speech. With the German decision, Musk is facing one of the most serious legal challenges of his career. And if he gives in, what happens next? Who will be the next target? Musk is not a man who gives up easily. He is known for his direct, sometimes sarcastic approach and attacks on systems he considers authoritarian. This is just the beginning of a big fight, and if Musk emerges victorious, it will set a precedent that could affect the future of all online platforms and freedom of expression online. The European authorities do not seek to regulate freedom of speech. They intend to control what is true and what is not. Elon Musk has made it clear that he will not give in to such attempts. In response to pressure from the EU and accusations of bias, he stated that freedom of expression cannot be restricted only if it corresponds to someone's government version of events. The issue here is not only Musk's struggle, but also the protection of the very idea of freedom of speech, which is becoming threatened by what is happening in Europe. Despite Musk's efforts to resist these actions, the pressure from Germany and France continues unabated. Germany, for example, has achieved an important victory in the legal field by forcing Musk to provide data on user activity on his platform. France has also launched an investigation into the alleged bias of X algorithms. These actions, according to the European authorities, are aimed at protecting democracy, but in fact they call into question freedom of speech on the internet. Musk, in turn, says that democracy cannot exist without freedom of opinion, without the ability to share different points of view, and without an honest exchange of information. All these events are not just a battle between Musk and European officials. In fact, it's about much more than that, about controlling the digital space. If the EU forces Musk to comply, it will set a dangerous precedent for the future of not only X, but all other platforms. The European Union seems to want to dictate what should be available to the public and what should not be, what is true and what is not, and who will control this process. Musk, in turn, understands that this is just the beginning. If he gives in, then other platforms will also be forced to comply with these harsh conditions. Freedom of speech on the internet will fall victim to pressure, and government agencies will be able to easily manipulate public opinion. This is not just a legal battle, but a battle for the future of the internet, for freedom of speech, and for everyone's right to independent expression. If Musk gives up, it will set a dangerous precedent for the whole world. And if Europe can control X today, tomorrow it may try to control YouTube, Telegram, and other platforms. The question is not who will win this war, but how far the authorities will be willing to go to control information. We, as a society, must closely monitor this, because if the EU wins this confrontation, it will mean the end of the free exchange of opinions on the internet, and authoritarianism will become a reality for all of us. Donald Trump's relations with Europe have always been tense, and this was especially evident during his presidency. The EU clearly supported Joe Biden as his policies, in the opinion of the Europeans, corresponded to their interests, especially in the field of climate change and international agreements. Biden proposed to restore allied relations and strengthen transatlantic ties. Trump, on the other hand, demonstrated skepticism towards the EU, preferring more pragmatic and often solitary approaches, which could not but cause discontent among European leaders. It is especially significant that Trump did not even invite Ursula von der Leyen, President of the European Commission, to his inauguration, a gesture that can be interpreted as a clear cooling of relations. This, without a doubt, indicates deep distrust and divergence in approaches to global issues. This tension between Trump and Europe has affected all politics, including trade, climate, as well as security and foreign policy issues. The EU felt that it was necessary to fight for its interests with Trump, and Biden became the figure with whom it was possible to find a common language and work on mutually beneficial terms. However, Trump's actions, such as his refusal to participate in international agreements and frequent attacks on Europe, make us think about the future of transatlantic relations. Trump has always positioned himself as a defender of U.S. interests, which has often led to conflicts with European leaders. However, despite all the contradictions, we can expect that his relations with the EU will remain complex and meaningful for a long time. And now I want to express my opinion, friends. This material causes me a strong feeling of anxiety. The confrontation between Elon Musk and the EU could really shake the delicate balance between Europe and the United States. After all, Musk is not just a businessman but a close friend of Donald Trump, and he, as you know, is not one of those who will watch his people being offended. If the EU really decides to start a full-fledged war with Musk, this will undoubtedly lead to diplomatic consequences, and the United States can be expected to intervene to protect his interests. This is no longer just a struggle for freedom of speech, but a clash of major political and economic players. Such a confrontation can turn events in a completely unpredictable direction, and I will be watching with interest how all this will develop. On the other hand, I'm a little intimidated by the scale of Musk's power. He controls such giants as Tesla, SpaceX, and X, formerly Twitter, and his influence on public opinion and the economy is incredibly great. This large amount of power in the hands of one person is no longer just a business activity, but a real political influence. It's hard for me to say how good or bad this is for society, but the fact remains that if Musk decides not to give in and continues to fight the EU, he will probably demonstrate that he can stand up to an entire continent. I will closely monitor developments and share my thoughts as the situation becomes clearer. And you must write your opinion on the material. Thank you for your attention. See you later.